going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing to you a video discussing the official April 1st OCG Forbidden and Limited list. This list was released late last night, and it's going to have a very profound impact on the OCG's metagame. So what I want to do today is I wanted to discuss the OCG's metagame a little bit for those of you who are uninformed, discuss the changes to their format from this new ban list, and also discuss some implications that we might see here in the TCG, maybe a bit of foreshadowing from what we might expect for our ban list here as well. So, starting off, for those of you guys who don't follow the OCG very regularly, this is a pie chart of the meta that they've kind of been dealing with. Now, the interesting thing is about the OCG meta, it's kind of been all over the place. There's been a lot of decks that have one week been extraordinarily strong, and then the next week they fall down hard. So there's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of fluctuation. But one of the things that's been staying rather consistent is Pendulum Magician being at the top. And their Pendulum deck is a lot different than ours because they still have Double Iris at 3. Well, maybe not for too long, but we'll get into that in a minute. But you look at the other decks here in the pie chart, you've got the new Brandish Maidens, which are making a big splash in the OCG as well. You've got stuff like ABC, like Altergeist, like Trickstar, Plants. These are all the different decks that are taking up many profound spots in the top cuts of the tournament. And the interesting thing is it's very similar to our pie chart here in the TCG, where there's, one or two maybe dominant decks, and then there's a lot of decks that can actually compete at a competitive level. So how did the new ban list change this up? Well, starting off with the forbidden cards, there's two of them. We have Blackwing Gofu the Vague Shadow and Phoenixian Cluster Amaryllis. Now, Gofu is one of the biggest ones. This is banned over here in the TCG, and in the OCG, Gofu was way more oppressive than it was here for us because the OCG has Crystron Needle Fiber. The fact that Gofu basically just enabled Crystron Needle Fiber for absolutely free, in addition to doing everything that Gofu can already do that's absolutely absurdly stupid, I think it's definitely good that the OCG hit this card to 0. It's more of the fact that, there's more broken cards that Gofu could go into more than anything, and the fact that Link Summoning kind of broke Gofu, but I think it's for the better overall. And then we have Phoenixian Cluster Amaryllis. So even when you look at the pie chart and you see that Plants aren't necessarily the top contender, there's some weeks where Plants have been the best deck, and by a long shot. Some weeks there's been just a ton of players playing Plants, and the thing you have to realize is, even if it's not the best deck, there's still an FTK involved here, and Phoenixian Cluster Amaryllis essentially is the heart and soul of that FTK. If you remove Amaryllis, the FTK just kind of goes away because they're not going to have the card to basically deal all the damage to their opponent. So I think this is an extraordinarily good hit because it basically just solves the Plant FTK issue as a whole. Now, unfortunately, there are some hits on this list that are going to affect Plants in the long run, but we'll get to those in a little bit. Now, moving on to the limited cards, there's a lot of them, so I'm going to go ahead and read them off. So starting off, we have Destiny Hero Disc Commander, we have Double Iris Magician, Supreme King Darkworm, Grinder Golem, Lone Fire Blossom, Predaplant Orphis Scorpio, El Shaddoll Winda, El Shaddoll Construct, Spellbook of Knowledge, and Invoked MECHABAE. So, starting off with Destiny Hero Disc Commander actually received an errata over in the OCG, and the effect basically reads now that you can only special summon him once per duel, or you can use the effect of him once per duel to draw 2 cards, and the other part of his errata is you can't resurrect him the same turn you send him to the graveyard. So that basically means they made Disc Commander absolutely fucking worthless, because I don't know why you would bother playing this card now, and it really sucks as someone who played Perfect Circle in the past. Disc Commander was a very big part of that. It's really unfortunate to see the errata just crush another really just iconic card, at least for me personally. Then we have Double Iris Magician. Now, obviously Double Iris Magician is banned here in the TCG. However, Double Iris being at 1 means it can still be used and abused in tandem with something like, let's say, Astrograph Sorcerer, because as long as you have the 1, you can still search your Pendulum graphs, and even though it's not as consistent as maybe having 3, I don't think Pendulum is going to be necessarily a dead deck by any means. Same thing with Darkworm going to 1 as well. Now, Supreme King Darkworm was effectively the replacement for a card like Performer Pal Skullcrobat Joker, just being a free +1 on normal summon. However, Darkworm could also be special summoned from the graveyard, so people would splash in cards like Foolish Burial and Dragon Shrine, and even if you weren't playing Pendulum Magician, some decks would just run the Darkworm so they could have a free level 4 to summon to the field, so that they could make a Link play or a rank 4 for free, in addition to their normal summon. Having this card go to 1 really isn't that big of a deal, because a lot lot of decks actually just play one Dark Worm and then they play multiple copies of Shrine and Foolish Burial because they don't want to normal summon it. They would just play the extra copies because, you know, they just had the space, and if they happen to draw it, well, that's really not too big of a deal either because you're still going to get that +1 on summons. So realistically, both of these cards going to 1, while it will hinder Pendulum Magician's ability to perform, I don't think Magician is out of it. Astrograph's still at 3, you've still got stuff like Electromite at 3. I definitely think Pendulum Magician will still be very playable in the OCG's metagame, but we'll just have to wait and see. Now this gets us on to Grinder Golem. We also have Grinder Golem at 1 here in the TCG, and it was at 2 previously in the OCG. I think this is definitely going to be enough to make it not see any more play. At 2, Grinder Golem is definitely a considerable card because you're going to see it often enough that you can pull off some of the crazy combos that it involves. But here, you know, now that it's at 1, I really don't think it's worth running just that one copy because there could be so many other better cards you could play over that one Grinder Golem. And here in the TCG, we don't even have the cards to combo off with it, so I definitely don't think it's going to be seeing much play, if any at all. Now this gets us to the big hitters when it comes to plants, Lone Fire Blossom and Prenoplant Orphis Scorpio going to 1. Now, these are really big hits, and I question these hits because if they hit Phoenixia and Cluster Amaryllis, and this essentially solves the plant FTK, what's really wrong with a deck that can just do a ton of link spamming, playing cards like Lone Fire and Prenoplant Orphis Scorpio as a whole? I mean, that's the thing that really kind of bothers me about this. Now, if they didn't ban Amaryllis, I would be a little bit more hesitant with them still leaving these cards at 3, but the fact that they solved the plant FTK, but then they also put a check on these cards as well, is a little bit disheartening. I mean, I really like seeing these cards being splashed in a myriad of different decks, like Lightsworn and Gemknight FTK, and I guess that's another degenerate use for it, but it's a really good high risk, high reward type of card because if your Scorpio gets hit, most likely your turn is going to end and you're not going to be able to do anything else because that's pretty much what you've committed to doing for that entire turn because you had to invest your normal summon. You also had to discard for cost for that card's effect as well, but if it resolved, it's going to result in a very strong yield of advantage and might put you in a position that's just going to flat out win the game on resolution. So maybe it was a bit too swingy, but I don't know. I personally think that these cards are okay, but definitely banning Amaryllis was realistically just enough. I don't know if plants are going to survive this. It's going to be very hard for them to recover from that. Then we have El Shaddoll Winda and El Shaddoll Construct going to 1. So I was about to say 3. That'd be a little, that's the dream. But El Shaddoll Construct going to 1, this is what everyone has been hoping for because this is just so awesome. I mean, again, will Shaddolls be top tier meta? Probably not, but there are ways for some decks to use Shaddoll Construct, and you know, we see stuff like Shaddoll Dinosaur and decks that are able to incorporate a Shaddoll engine in them, and I think it'd be really cool now that they can splash Construct in there as well. And then Winda going to 1, I'm not sure if it was at 2 before, I think it might have been at 3, but Winda going to 1 is interesting, maybe because they put Construct to 1, they figure, oh, we gotta put Winda in check as well, otherwise Shaddolls might be too good. I don't know, but if Construct back at 1, who cares? Usually you only need 1 Winda anyway, and that usually seals out the game. And last but not least, Spellbook of Knowledge and Invoked MECHABAE. Now these cards kind of go together because Alistair is a spellcaster, so you can use Spellbook of Knowledge to tribute it off. The interesting thing about this is MECHABAE more than anything, because Invoked is a deck, I mean, I feel like the OCG just has this hatred towards Invoked because you look, they had Alistair at 1, it's now at 2 on the semi-limited list, which we'll get to in a bit here, but is Invoked really that big of a threat? Sure, they do have some extra cards like the Invoked Link Monster and things like that, and I've supposedly heard that Brandish Invoked is actually a very, very good consistent deck because you're basically taking these two very strong singular engines and just morphing them together, so I guess maybe they were afraid of that deck just overwhelming the format, but having MECHABAE go to 1 may be a little bit of overkill, but on the other hand, I guess they get Alistair back to 2, so maybe that's the trade-off. Now getting to the semi-limits, this is where it gets really interesting. So Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, Alistair the Invoker, which I already mentioned, Solemn Judgment, and True Draco Heritage. Now Heritage doesn't matter because Diagram and Masterpiece are banned, so we're just going to ignore that one. But Ash Blossom going to 2 is very interesting. Remember, Max C is still at 3 in the OCG, and rather than them doing anything about Max C, they decided to go ahead and semi-limit Ash Blossom. Now, in their defense, Ash Blossom is actually the most played card currently in the OCG, and probably has been for quite some time. That's just because it's that powerful and strong of a card, but having it semi-limited is really interesting and shows that they wouldn't be afraid to do something very similarly here in the TCG. So we might see something like with Zodiac all over again from last year, where they put Ash Blossom in the Megatins, and then they immediately hit it on the ban list once they sell a ton of Megatins. I don't want to be too, pessimistic about it, but it's very realistic that it could happen. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this is that Grass Looks Greener is still at 3 in the OCG, which means Grass decks actually got a very strong boost from Ash Blossom going to 2, because now there's a lot higher likelihood that that card will resolve. So, very interesting to see that. Alistair going to 2, I pretty much said everything I wanted to about Invoked, so I don't know, we'll just have to see if there's any hope for that deck. And then Judgment going to 2 is also really cool. We just had it go to 1, and having that card at 2, I think they're starting to play with fire a little bit, because we're going to be going back to the days of Triple Solemn Judgment here soon, and that's a little bit scary. Plus, not to mention Red Reboot also exists in the meta, so that's like 6 cards that you can use to be negating one another back and forth. I don't know, we'll have to see. I guess it's a bit of a slow card nowadays, but it's one of those cards that it can just get really out of hand really fast. And wrapping this video up, we have the Unlimits, which are basically irrelevant except for one card. Tribe Infecting Virus, no one cares. Summoner Monk, no one cares. Spellbook Secrets, well, I mean, they just put Knowledge to 1, so I guess that's fine. I think it might have been at 1 previously. Reborn Tengu, again, have minimal to no impact. Pot of Avarice, which, again, that card was at 2 and no one was playing it, so at 3 it's not going to matter. Monster Gate's a little bit interesting, again, in tandem with the 60 card decks, so that's something to look out for. And last but not least, my favorite change on this entire list is Pantheism of the Monarchs going to 3. This is insane because unless I'm wrong, they also have Aether at 3 and they have Stormforth at 3, which means that full power Monarch is actually legal in the OCG. Now, will it have an impact? We'll just have to wait and see, but Pantheism is probably one of my favorite cards of all time, and the fact that they have full power Monarch available in the OCG to play just makes me really excited to see what their meta has in store. So guys, that's it for the official April 1st OCG Forbidden and Limited list. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this list as a whole, and any changes on this list you agree with or disagree with. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video informative, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.